Isolated, divided, tired, months of waiting, months of longing, looking for an answer, looking for hope. When the light has faded and our anxiety has grown, you can still hear it. Don't be afraid. A child is born, to us a son is given. He is called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, Emanuel. He is the path in a world that's lost its way. He is the thrill of hope to this down, disheartened world. He is the light that even darkness bows to. He is what our weary hearts have longed for. He is the sound of hope, conquering all our fear. He is God with us. His name is Jesus.
Rejoice, rejoice, Emanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Oh, come thou dayspring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and as dark shadows put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Oh, come thou wisdom from on high, and order all things far and nigh. To us the path of knowledge show, and cause us in her ways to grow. Rejoice, rejoice, Emanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Oh, come, desire of nations by, all peoples in one heart and mind. Bid envy, strife, and quarrel cease. Fill the whole earth with heaven's peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emanuel shall come to thee, O Israel.
Christmas is a long time coming. I know that's probably the understatement of the century, but it's the truth. Everywhere you go, no matter if it's a retail store that sells groceries, a retail store that sells home goods, a retail store that sells home improvement things, a retail store that sells anything, after Labor Day, it's Christmas time, right? That's just the way it goes. For the entire year, you've probably been aware of countdowns, either on social media or anywhere, really, that let you know how many Sundays are left till Christmas, or how many days, or weeks, or hours, or minutes, or seconds, or gray hairs are left till Christmas. By the way, I just want to let you guys know, you have approximately 365 days until next Christmas Eve, so you better get your shopping done. Some stores kind of make their whole thing about Christmas, right? Because they want you to kind of get into the spirit in February or August Or really, whenever the mood strikes you, you can go in there, you can buy a Christmas tree, stockings, and an inflatable Grinch for your lawn, which is what every person needs. But here's the thing. I say all this to say this again. Christmas is a long time coming. And that's something we kind of share with those who were at the first Christmas, right? It was a long time coming. Yeah, they didn't have trees or lights or TV specials or movies or the Hallmark Channel, and maybe that's a good thing. But they had something that was much more hopeful and hope-filled. For generations, the people of God were called into a special relationship with God. He had a covenant relationship with them where he said, I will be your God and you will be my people. This is how it's going to work. I'm going to set up these boundaries, if you will, or set up this agreement with you that if you do these things, I'm going to walk with you, literally walk with you, wherever you go, and I have a place prepared for you, so just head over there. And they did, and it worked. Sometimes or often I should say, the provision happened from God through a leader to the nation of Israel, God's chosen people of the Old Testament. And it worked out really well most of the time, or at least some of the time. Other times it didn't, but they got back on track, it seemed. Eventually, though, the nation of Israel, understood this important dynamic. And they demanded that this dynamic be even more important. They demanded a king. Now, you don't want to mess around with kings. That's not something, and God told them that. You don't want to mess around with that. That's not something you should concern yourselves with. What we have is working. It's good. But they said no. So God said, okay, here you go. Here's a king. And as you can expect, things went downhill, as often happens whenever we are given exactly what we want, right? And they had some good kings. They had some kings that were quite popular then, even kings that were popular to this day, like King David of David and Goliath fame. But each king seemed to drive a wedge in between them and the hope they originally clung to. Let me say that again. Each king seemed to drive a wedge in between the hope that they originally clung to and the present day. And they didn't notice it, and they didn't become aware of it until, really, it was too late. It was too late to reverse course, it seemed. They had gone down a path, and they couldn't retrace their steps. Eventually, things did go away. Their land was conquered, and their people were carted off. They were carted off to live in a strange land. They experienced something that nobody ever wanted to experience, the big E word, exile, and they were there. They were in exile. They had the temple at one point in their own land, and then the temple where they believed God resided, and he did for a while, at least for a few moments. It was destroyed. It was torn down. It was dismantled. It was demolished and ruined, just like everything else they had experienced. Everything about them, every ounce of hope they had, started to wane. They had prophets, though. They had these truth tellers that would go in and tell them, hey, guess what? The things are terrible now. And they would all look around and say, yeah, it is terrible. And these truth tellers, these prophets would say, but something is going to happen. Something good is going to come of this. I promise you, and not just me promising you, it's God promising you that something good is going to come of this. You can hold on to that. That's something that's tangible. You can hold on to. All right? You have hope in the midst of this. And they did. They're in the midst of those exile moments. Even after they got back to their own land and things weren't what they were before, guess what? They held on to these moments of hope that were given to them by these prophets in which God said, someone is coming. Someone is coming. A ruler is going to come and set things right. And this ruler is going to lead, and not just like lowercase L lead. I'm talking like uppercase L, all caps, bold, underlined, highlighted, circled, whatever else you want to do. That type of lead. He's going to lead in that way. And they waited. They were waiting for the one who would come from them, who would lead them, one who would bring peace, one who would restore hope. Of the greatness of his government, one prophet said, there will be no end. All right, sign me up. When did this start? And year after year, it didn't start. 400 years of silence from God. no prophets, no truth tellers, no seeming activity from God. And little by little, year by year, day by day, month by month, week by week, hope started to wane even more. If hope was a flicker of a flame, it was gone. They were back in their land, sure, but what good is it if you don't have anything you had before? Well, they continued to be swapped from one empire to another, eventually falling under Roman rule. And hope was just this. It was one flame, and it was about to be extinguished. It's like somebody was holding their breath right there, about to blow that flame out. Oh no, what happens then? They were a weary people. They were a despondent generation. Things perhaps you would use to describe us today, here and now. I don't know about you. But what I do know is that we have a lot in common with these people. And it was at this point something different happened. It was at this point when it seemed like all the walls were closing in, and it seemed like that flame started to flicker more and more, and you hope it doesn't go out. It seemed like at that point something different happened to two young people named Mary and Joseph. Perhaps you've heard of them before. They're key figures in this Christmas story. Now, I can be honest with you, and I hope this is okay to say. On one hand, I'm not that envious of Mary and Joseph. Yeah, being key figures in the Christmas story, yeah, that's great. All right, sign me up, sure, whatever. But they had a rough go of it for a while. It was not the quaint picture that we see sometimes. Mary, consider her for a moment. Being pregnant. Being pregnant is hard enough. Or so I'm told. I've never done it before. Thank you for the two laughs out there. Anyway, being pregnant in the first century would have been much, much harder than it is today, because there's no ultrasounds, there's no medicine apart from what nature could give you. There's no pregnant mommy blogs to let you know why your feet are swelling 3 sizes too big, or 13 sizes too big, or what those weird cravings are. There's none of that to help you get through that. You even had the experience of other moms at the time who have gone through pregnancy, but as you know, you who have been pregnant before, the experience from one person to another is wildly different. The contrast can be stark. Add on top of that pregnancy, the news surrounding the pregnancy. Put yourself in Mary's shoes for a moment, and the stares that you would get as you walk through the town square, as you walk through crowds, and then people are whispering perhaps to one another. People are looking at you because you're pregnant and you're not married. Scandalous. Scandalous, because that's not something you did in the first century. You see, getting pregnant before you got married meant something. And because it meant something, it meant that you were going to go through some trouble there for yourself. And not only is that, and I'm going to say bad enough, but strange enough, heavy enough, if you will, but there's this news that this baby is the one they've all been waiting on. This baby is the one that these prophets talked about over 400 years ago and counting. That this baby is the one who was the Messiah, meaning anointed one, the set-apart king, the one who would come and lead, like, again, all caps, lead, circle, highlight, whatever, lead his people of the greatness of his government. There will be no end, Isaiah says. It's this child. But they've been waiting a while, so who knows? Who knows? All they know is they see Mary, and they know there's an order to things, and she seemed to do it out of order. That's a problem. And that's not all of it either. Let's weave this thread a little bit more. Look at it from Joseph's perspective. Perhaps you can relate to him a little bit more. I don't know. You are in the lineage of King David. That's great, but you're a carpenter. You're not assuming the throne anytime soon, and there's no shame in being a carpenter, but your ancestry is royal. And to top it all off, you have no idea what is next. You have no idea what is next. It's one thing to bear a child, to be the father of a child, in which you say, and I'm talking from experience, I don't know what I'm doing. But whenever that son, supposedly from what Mary has told you, when an angel told Mary, and then what an angel has told you, that this child is going to be the Messiah, I don't know what to do. I hope it works well. All right, I'm just going to hear. This, what would you do as a father? And then, on top of that, the leader of where you live, the emperor of one of the mightiest empires of all time, calls for a census. Now, of all times, can you delay it like 6 months? Not going to be really that much easier, but at least there will be 3 instead of 2 plus, or 1 and 1 about to be 2, right? Like it's getting there. The emperor of one of the mightiest empires of all time calls for a census, and that presents a problem in and of itself. This is how Luke shares this, starting in verse 1 of Luke chapter 2. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. Huge, huge, huge. Verse 2, this was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to their own town to register. This was the process for a census at this time. Verse 4, so Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. We're pretty familiar with this. But there is a ton going on here. Joseph's situation at the moment is pretty stark. You have to travel back to where you're from. You have to travel back to where your family is from, because you're in David's lineage. He's part of your ancestry. Oh, that must be really cool. Yeah, until you have to go to Bethlehem when your wife is your fiance is 9 months pregnant. Then it becomes a little bit more difficult. Then it becomes a little bit more, more difficult to accept. You have to go from where you are to this little town outside the big city of Jerusalem, and that's a pretty lengthy journey just to be counted. Something minuscule, but something that's necessary. The government worked this way. The government functioned this way. They have to be counted. And, the emperor said so. There's a decree that went out. This is what's going to happen. And, you kind of have to do it. You don't really have a choice. You're going to have to go. So go they went. Very pregnant Mary. Very nervous Joseph. This all seems like it's the wrong timing, doesn't it? Man, if there's any other time this could work, let it work then. If there's any other time this could work, let it work then. This past November, I was called for jury duty. You might think, that has nothing to do with this story. You're right, I just want to tell this because it's therapeutic for me. But anyway, I was called for jury duty. And it was the week of Thanksgiving. It was the week of Thanksgiving. And we go to Kentucky for Thanksgiving to see my side of the family, see my mom, see my aunts, so on and so forth. And I was like, man, that's a terrible time to have jury duty. Not that there's ever a good time to have jury duty, but that's a terrible, terrible time to have jury duty. And then I found out you can delay it. So that's what I did, right? I said, if there's any other time for this to work, let it work then. And so I delayed it until I can find another reason to not do it in March. Anyway, this all seems like the wrong timing. I'm just kidding. I'll do my civic duty, don't worry. But this seems like the wrong timing. But pay attention to this. Starting in verse 6 of Luke chapter 2. This is huge. While they were there, the time came. Dun, 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 right? The time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. The time came. Do not miss that. The time came for the baby to be born. You can't delay it anymore. It's here. It's knocking on the door, and you've got to open it, or you're going to be in trouble, right? This is not good. The time came. Now, I don't think this is in here by mistake. I don't think when Luke was compiling this for Theophilus that he just kind of happened to write these words. I think this is under divine inspiration, that perhaps God said the time was right. Timing was not wrong. No, this was the right time for Jesus to be born. You see, if we look at this a little bit further, we put up these little nativity scenes every year that include a baby and two parents and some other people and a bunch of animals. And if we just want to throw biblical literacy to the wind, we put the wise men in there. We'll talk about that later. Not tonight, but just later. And we put the wise men in there, even though they didn't come till later. And all of them are doing something that's all kind of quaint, cute, and pretty, right? The animals are quiet, the parents are solemn, the baby is calm and sleeping. You ever been around a baby? Anyway. Other people are looking on or are bowing, and again, everything is just, it's clean, it's neat. But honestly, this probably wasn't the scene at all. It was not the Hobby Lobby version. No, you see, here's the thing about animals, they stink. I don't know if you know that or not. But especially farm animals, they have a smell to them. And some people appreciate that smell. I don't know if Mary was one of them. I don't know if Joseph was one of them. But they were there and they had to smell it anyway. They're in a stable and this baby named Jesus was lying in a feeding trough for these animals. Now, can you imagine these animals suspending their appetite and their diet because, well, Jesus is born, we can't eat anything? I don't think so. And this is not biblical at all. This is just how it works in my head, so that's a little scary, but I'm going to let you in on this. I can just imagine Mary and Joseph standing there with little baby Jesus in the manger, in the feeding trough, with some hay. Swaddled clothes, sure, but hay. And perhaps a donkey's coming up because it's dinner time. You know what I'm saying? I don't care if there's a baby in there or not. And so he starts nibbling on the edge of the hay, and perhaps Mary and Joseph's like, no, not 1 inch further. Not 1 inch further. They're watching very closely at this baby. Speaking of Mary and Joseph, I don't know many mothers who give birth, excuse me, and within an hour or two are cleaned up and ready to go, and smiling, and sitting there all humbled and praying. I don't think that's the case. Even with our technology and medicine, that doesn't happen today. Mary is laying there with all of her exhaustion and pain and soreness, surrounded by farm animals, kind of different than the figures, again, you can buy at Hobby Lobby or a Hallmark. And finally, there's Jesus, little baby Jesus. You know, my son Caleb was born. My aunt claims that she knew the exact moment that he was born because even though she was down the hall and in a waiting room at the end of the hall, she heard him scream at the top of his lungs. And that's true. I was in there. Imagine a newborn baby being born into all of this. Imagine a newborn baby being born in a stable and being laid down in swaddling clothes in a manger. Now, I don't know much about swaddling clothes. I was never good at it for Caleb. But I'm going to assume that they can't make hay or even just wood that comfortable. This all seems like the wrong time. It wasn't. It wasn't. We would be wrong about that. We'd be wrong about the wrong time. You see, remember, hope was a flicker of a flame. Hope was a flicker of a flame. There was nothing else to turn to. There was nothing else going on. God was seemingly silent for 400 years. What other hope do we have? We have to see if this Jesus is the real thing. God appeared in flesh. Could this be what they were waiting on? Could this be the leader that they were waiting on to make things right, born right there in a feeding trough? Could it be? Dare we dream, dare we hope that this is the thing? Surrounded by animals in the little town of Bethlehem during a Roman census. Turns out it was. Craziest thing, right? And we know that because we have the whole story put together in an anthology, right? It's called the Bible. And we get to read the whole story, page after page after page, of how Jesus was born and how he lived his life and what he taught and what he said and what he did and what miracles he did, and then how he died and how he rose again and how he appeared to hundreds of people and how he ascended to heaven, how he sent the Holy Spirit to live within followers. One of the people that put these pieces together, one of these people that followed Jesus and helped put these pieces together for other people, was a man named Paul. Paul had somewhat of a crazy story. He went from wanting to arrest Christians to being a Christian, from hating Jesus followers to being a Jesus follower and leading others to be Jesus followers. And what he did is he would start churches all over the place, all over the Mediterranean. It's a crazy journey. And then he would, get thrown in prison or something like that. And he'd write letters from prison back to those churches he started. And one such letter we have here in the book of Galatians in the New Testament. And he helped them put these things together about Jesus. And this is what he says. I'm going to read 2 verses from Galatians chapter 4. But when the set time had fully come, don't miss this. Don't miss this. You remember back in Luke chapter 2, verses 6 and 7? While they were there, the time came, but when the set time had fully come. When the alarm clock rang, it was time. This was the alarm clock that rang. When the set time had fully come, God sent His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. He was born so that we might be reborn. He was born at the right time. It wasn't wrong. This wasn't a random circumstance. This wasn't something that happened because God was getting to the bottom of His bag of tricks and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do next, so, all right, here's a baby. Good luck, That's not what happened at all. This whole thing, the waiting, the silence, the census, the manger, was going along right on track. And at the right moment, when the set time had fully come, right on target, right on plan, Jesus was born. There was not a better moment for Him to be born. Believe it or not. Right when the flame of hope was about to flicker out. Right at the moment the candle was going to be extinguished, possibly forever, Jesus, the Son of God, was born. Right at the moment that the hope that God was going to do anything about anything was about to be completely eliminated, Jesus was born to Mary and Joseph in Bethlehem in a manger for all mankind. And what does this do for us? What does this mean for us? This means that perhaps God has a plan. This means perhaps for us there is hope, even when it seems like there's not. Now, if there's anything we can hold on to at Christmas time, it's that something has happened then that gives us hope now. Something happened then that gives us hope now. It means that hope is not an abstract idea for us. That because one was born, we can be reborn. It means that our chasing after God's approval is petty and useless. It's over. It means stacking up our good deeds against our bad deeds to see if we're worth anything. Those days are over. It means that hope for us is restored. It means that every day we can take this candle in our life, we can hold it up, say, believe it or not, I have hope. I have hope that today's not it. I have hope that tomorrow's not it either. There's hope for us. There's hope for you. There's hope for me. So this morning, or this evening, this evening, we get to share this hope around. You get this flame, feel free to pass it one to another. That's kind of how hope works, right? When one person has hope, the next person gets hope, right? One person starts to follow Jesus, kind of takes the right around. I don't think that's on purpose. I think Jesus knew exactly what He was doing. I think God knew exactly what was going on. And He planned it that way. After all, when the set time had fully come, Jesus was born so that we might have a friendly relationship with God. And church, we do. Just like the old song says, a thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. You have hope, and so do I. Tonight, as we light these candles, may we be reminded of that. And as we light these candles, may we sing along these words and mean every second of it, Silent Night. Will you sing along with the band?
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child. So tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory streams from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face. With the dawn of redeeming grace, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth.
The time has come, and we get to celebrate accordingly. Will you pray with me? God, we thank you so much for who you are. We thank you so much that at that first Christmas, your son was born in a manger of all places for us, so that we might be adopted into a family that's bigger than anything we can imagine, that gives us a sense of community that's bigger than anything we can imagine, that gives us hope and peace and purpose and passion and life. It's because of your son. It's because you put on flesh and dwelt among us, and we thank you so much for that. And we celebrate that at this time, this Christmas. Lord, be with us as we go and we celebrate Christmas even more, remembering that the time has come. We love you and we thank you. And it's in your son's name we pray. Amen. Thank you all for coming. If you want, you can put your candles in the basket out at the table in the lobby. Thank you. Merry Christmas.